This is Red Ice Radio. My name is Henrik. A warm welcome to all our regular listeners and of course to everyone who is tuning in for the first time. We are coming to you from Gothenburg in Sweden, and you can follow us through our website redicecreations.com. We do interviews with researchers, authors, filmmakers on many different subject matters. Information that we consider to be important, interesting and intriguing. And we're not afraid to go into unknown areas and go where the information takes us. As we search for answers, no topic is off limits. The conclusion about the information presented, as always, we leave up to you. We are going to continue with Program 2 today with Andrew D. Basiago. I know a lot of people out there who are hungry for more information from Andrew about his experiences and research. On our website, redicecreations.com, you will find part 1 of our interview with Andrew, a 2-hour-long interview that will give you the full background story. So it's recommended that you listen to that before this program if you haven't already. Exopolitics.com is Andrew's and Alfred Weber's website. Also search for The Discovery of Life on Mars on Facebook.com for the Facebook group. So with that, welcome to the program, Andrew, and thank you for joining us again.
Well, it's great to be back with you, Henrik, and I look forward to today's discussion as well.
Absolutely, and we have 2 different strands, basically, of information we want to discuss today. One is, of course, about your experiences on Mars, to keep it short, and the other one is about the research that you've done on some of the publicly available photos of Mars from NASA, ESA, and so forth. But we do have a few questions that obviously have been coming in between these programs that we've done here, and so what I can do is just fire away a few questions to you that have been coming in, and we'll see if you have any comments on that. What do you think about that, Andrew?
That's great. Just fire away. I'm looking forward to what has been asked regarding our last time together here on Red Ice. Absolutely,
and it's been kind of varied, so to speak. But a few things that has been coming in is a little bit about the jump gate device. Obviously, one question, for instance, was about from a person who mentioned what good is the jump gate device if you can't take something with you, like let's say a cell phone or let's say a camcorder or video, so that you can record your experiences or anything with metal when you travel. And this particular guy said, I haven't been able to remove my wedding band for 30 years. Would I show up on the other end with 9 fingers?
Yeah, that's very funny. I don't remember any protocol involving metal when Courtney Hunt took me to that CIA facility in El Segundo, California in the summer of 1981. In fact, I was so little trained on that jump room that we entered the building in the center of the building, on the ground floor, and we went up an elevator. And I didn't realize at the time that the jump room was the elevator. We arrived at about the 5th floor, and there was a counter there, kind of like when you have a Fijian suite in a law firm in the United States. You have sort of a central console where a receptionist or a secretary, or sometimes a guard, sort of sits at this big counter, and you have multiple offices around it, sort of in a semicircle. So we arrived on the 5th floor there, and there was only one man sitting there. And he clearly knew who Courtney M. Hunt of the CIA was, because they sort of laughed derisively at each other when he walked into the room. And then Hunt had given me minimal training at another location in the San Fernando Valley about what was going to happen when I went to Mars. But I didn't realize that literally the elevator that we used to reach the 5th floor was the jump room. And so I said, where's the teleport? Because as a child in Project Pegasus in the early 1970s, I had really jumped through 2 devices. One was this basic Tesla energetic array that was in Building 68 at the Curtiss-Wright Aeronautical Company facility in Woodridge, New Jersey. And it consisted basically of 2 parenthesis-shaped objects that were about 8 feet tall. They were battleship gray, and they were facing each other about 10 feet apart on the shop floor. And they would propagate this field of energy that sort of looked like water falling in a public water sculpture of some kind. But when you went up to about a foot, they looked like a raster on the energy field looked like a raster on a TV set. Now, when we were using that device, that Tesla energetic array, to reach Santa Fe, New Mexico from Woodridge, New Jersey, or when we were returning to Curtiss-Wright from an identical lab with an identical device in it at the Sandia National Labs, in Sandia, New Mexico, we could not bring any metal along. I mentioned, I think, during the our previous conversation here in Red Ice that I had to put this sort of Boy Scout belt on with a plastic buckle. Mm-hmm. So the whole time I was in the company of my father or project people in New Mexico, I always felt somewhat embarrassed because we had this cloth striped belt on. It was like it had red and blue banding on it. It may very well have been a belt from the Boy Scout troop or the Cub Scouts or whatever, because metal it basically cannot go through the teleporter because of the electrostatic discharge that comes off the metal.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily going to be catastrophic, but it basically creates a lot of arcing and static electricity in the Vortal tunnel. So part of our training was just remembering that every time we got to Curtis Wright to remove our belt and put on an alternate, this cloth and plastic belt. But I don't remember that being part of our training when we took the jump room to Mars. I don't remember going through any special protocol to remove my belt and hence my metal belt buckle. Yeah, and the other strange thing is that clearly in the case of the device, the teleporter at Curtis Wright, and in contradistinction to the jump room at Mars, nothing went with us when we were jumping between New Jersey and New Mexico. And similarly, when we jumped to the future from the Cerrillos Cultural Center site in Cerrillos, New Mexico, where they built this huge sort of black anvil-shaped Stargate, and that was in collaboration with project members in the year 2045. That also didn't involve, when we jumped through this sort of neon blue doorway that was notched in the bottom of that we would run up a ramp that had this no-stick black rubber surface on it, and we would run through that neon light in a portal at the bottom of that huge device. There was nothing around us. We were essentially we weren't enshrouded in anything, even protective clothing in that context. I did mention the protective clothing that was used during the chronovisor probe to the year 2013 that took place at ITT Defense Communications on November 5th of 1971. There we were being subjected to a light field that was so dense and potentially harmful to us, physiologically speaking, that we actually had something in the nature of a spacesuit on. We had a crystal helmet and this sputter-coated sort of titanium jumpsuit and boots that had been sputter-coated with some highly reflectant metal. And see, there's the paradox there. There they were protecting us from what we were being hit by in the dense hologram that the chronovisors were capable of generating. A light that I might add was so bright that we were trained not to look up at the crystal array, which was basically used a form of bismuth crystal to generate this dense field of light that could bend non-local events into the laboratory. That light was so bright that we were trained not to look up at it because we would become permanently blind. In fact, we were told one of the little girls who was one of our contemporaries, one of our young colleagues on the project, was rendered permanently blind as a result of looking up at the crystal array when it was propagating this dense light field. But in the case of the jump room to Mars that I ultimately sort of was the crescendo of activities. I mean, there had been obviously an almost 10-year gap between 1972 and 1981, but presumably because I had teleported as a child in Project Pegasus, they thought, well, here's an individual who is familiar with this experience, is going to be able to cope with it. There were several, obviously, differences with the jump room. First of all, we were enshrouded by a room that went with us. Now, what that was made of, I have no idea. Presumably, that was punched through the Vortal tunnel around us. There were some strange spatial effects and sensory effects in the sense that about halfway there, it was about a 20-minute trip. And at about, I would say from about, let's say, 8 minutes to 12 minutes, right in the center of the trip, the